just had a little video. I think we're good now. Hello, everybody.
Hello. I can't see anybody, though. Does anybody want to show themselves?
Yeah. I don't think I have my camera off. No, mine's on. There we are. I see Pete now, at least.
Okay. Oh, ta-da, ta-da. There we are.
Hey, nice to see you, Dr. Mari and Pete.
Hello, everybody. Sorry we're late. It's Pete's fault.
So,
Peter.
Yeah, what's up?
Let's see. Dr. Murray, you have low disk space. Fix that, please.
I have what?
You have low disk space.
Low disk space. Does that mean I have to close things? all the lovely.
I think it's time to update your gateway computer.
Yeah, I've been resisting. Everything is on this thing. I can go on my phone. Do you want me to come back on my phone?
No. We're good. Okay. So Anthony, what's been going on?
I've just been thinking about, have you guys heard that, Dr. Mari may appreciate this, have you guys heard that social media, meaning media where you're primarily communicating, like Facebook and Instagram, apparently those are in decline now for the first time ever, and it's only the short form videos like TikTok that are still going up. Yeah. So there's good and bad, right? Like maybe social media wasn't great, but at the same time, is the short form video much better? And so I don't know. So that's what I've been thinking about the past week for sure.
Oh, well, perfect button to push for me. I mean, just wind me up and here I go. I always say there's nothing wrong with a little, a lot wrong with a lot. And I think that's the major issue in all of this. And any form of social media, any type of, I would say, technological communication, if it's used as a complement, again, it can be really, really positive. The issue always is that it was an override or a washout, meaning people were not interacting socially with them, with each other. So as far as I'm concerned, it became anti-social media, exactly the opposite. And then, this has been very well documented in my work and in work of others. The beginning of the alter ego. So, the way people present themselves only in their forms of perfection, but where it really started to go around, that was kind of the fun part of fantasy, but then, all of the comparisons, and then that's where a lot of the depression and anxiety started to come in, because people were very, very aware that was their not real self. And, you're just upping the ante. And, people like the Kardashians were just running to the bank as billionaires based on this. And I'm probably dating myself because they were the big thing. Oh, wow, probably 20 years ago. But they've stayed on top of this, and there are more and more of the influencers, et cetera. So, again, I'm not against social media as long as you're doing quote unquote other things. We talk about the quote unquote influencers as well. The name is in it. They're paid to influence your behavior and primarily your purchase behavior. So why we're seeing individuals who do that and only that as role models or sources of knowledge is just beyond me. It's kind of like in the 1950s, the lovely lady holding up the soap or the man holding up the cigarette. Of course, I'm completely genderizing. You kind of followed them because they were attractive and cool, but you never thought that they were the smartest people on the planet who knew everything. And I guess the last little comment there is the kids goofing around with the TikTok, the Snapchat. It's the same thing, a little bit like, goofing around playing footsie under the table when you were kids, 40 years ago versus goofing around a little bit with your phone. It went on a little bit until your parents said, hey, stop it, right? But the catch is the parents aren't saying, hey, stop it, and they've lost control, right? So again, kids games are technology based, nothing wrong with it. The issue is the override. So I'm not anti-tech. I'm anti-only tech. And my stuff, my God, I came out with the big studies in 2013 in terms of the association with what I then was calling the big three: anxiety, depression, and The obsessive compulsive, anything under there. And by the way, I throw ADHD in that one, just boom. That is over 10 years old. I mean, we just completely ignored all the canaries in the coal mine. The freaking coal mine was full of canaries, like bats on top, just dropping down. And
I love it.
Like, oh, what's going on? Have the bats turned yellow and all dying? I mean, yeah.
How did this happen? No, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cute. So you said you authored that paper in 2013? That's incredible.
Yeah. My first paper on gaming addiction, I think, was 2015. And again, none of these things got action, You
know what? Jonathan Haidt, I'm sure you're familiar, the Anxious Generation author.
I've got some issues with that because he doesn't reference a lot of the work of the people before him. I think it's fantastic that it got the publicity, but so many people were writing about this who are not referenced by him. He put a megaphone on it.
Well, he was at Harvard and then he was at NYU, so there's something. He probably is photogenic and all this, but I just bring it up to say he worries about the gaming. It's not that he's not worried about the gaming, but he does say that at least when you're gaming, you're cooperating and you're communicating with somebody you probably know. But the boys are mostly gaming, the girls are mostly on Instagram and etc.
Well, I think he has to look in a little bit deeper. When I first started this, it was exclusively male. The issues were inversely related to age and education. So essentially, the younger you were and the more educated you were, the higher the chances that you would have excessive interactive screen use, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's not finding your social place, right? Sorry?
What'd you say?
I think it wasn't finding your place socially. That was before the geeks were cool, right?
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So now the geeks are cool. So that kind of changed. But the pattern.
Go on. Sorry.
I don't know. I think it was getting my years of, around 2015 or so, I would say we started. I called it the pandering to pink. Okay. So essentially they were relabeling and repackaging in pink and trying to appeal more to females. But there is the lure tends to be more for gaming on the male brain for whatever reason. I think there is a socializing component, but I mean, again, if it's one of the things that people do, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there's a lot of yip yapping in teams and social bonding and all kinds of things going on, but it becomes a major issue if you're not doing anything else.
I like that you're stressing in balance and moderation because and I've seen positive studies. I mean, there's studies showing that social media can support well-being if it's helping you connect with people that you're already friends with, real life friends. Oh, I think we lost her. There's people that it can they said for different disenfranchised groups that it can help them find community online.
Oh my God. What's really, really funny? Okay, I have to hold it up. I'm writing something else and I pulled out. This is my 2013. See the date?
Wow.
That's my dissertation.
That's incredible. Okay, it was your dissertation. That's great.
My dissertation in 2013 was
on. And what's the title? I didn't get to read it, but.
Okay. Electroencephalographic EEG brain map patterns in a clinical sample of adults diagnosed with an internet addiction.
Oh, wow. So you got some hardcore research into this. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
I knew about the book, obviously, but
I've been on this a while, and again, I'm happy it's coming out now, but also a little bit pissed off.
I know.
Understandably, yeah. But no, in terms of what you were saying there, number one, read the fine print of research. Pete, I'll send you a little connection if people want. I actually wrote an article on this, which is the 10 things you should remember from high school and research that the industry wants you to forget about. So it's all the red herrings and things like this, right? And like one example is that gaming is pro-social. It's like, yeah, any major activity that all the kids do together is pro-social, but it becomes really antisocial after a certain threshold. The other one, the reason why I held up my nice little dissertation is that was I wouldn't say number one finding, but it was very, very, very high up in terms of disfranchised people. And I would say one of the real positives of the online, or what we were calling internet communities, was that you could find yourself. And in the work that I was doing, again, this was 2010 to 2013, very, very disproportionate amount of transgender individuals before transgender was even on the radar. Okay.
Wow.
And gay and lesbian individuals in small communities. Again, we weren't even talking about queer. Queer was like, it wasn't on the radar as much. And it made complete sense. Because if you were in a small community, the hairdresser was a flamer. Okay, now I don't mean that as an insulting term, so please nobody write and scream. What I meant, somebody who loves to be flamboyant and dramatic, a very exaggerated type of personality type that works in certain professions like hairdressing and things like that. But if you were essentially somebody, a man who was attracted to men, but it wasn't announced in any other way, in the way you dressed and the way you spoke, and the way you comported yourself. These individuals were very, very isolated. So that's where online communities really, really made sense. And I still believe that if you, whether it's a very, I don't know, let's say you like collecting toothpicks, how many people in the world like collecting toothpicks? So you can find your little community, right? Nothing wrong with those type of things, but it's when it takes away all other forms of socialization and it just slashes the true sense of community. If you don't have face-to-face and heart-to-heart, you're going to be a really unhappy person. So compliment. I mean, the other example I use is grandparents. Okay, I always tell parents, you're fools if you have the grandparents, on their phones with the grandkids every day. If you live around the corner, ban the things. Okay, have the grandparents come over every other weekend or vice versa. Have real, face-to-face, heart-to-heart play. Now, if your grandparents live or your parents live on the opposite side of the planet, by God, of course, right? It's a wonderful form of communication and a way to keep in connection. So there you go.
I love it, and it sounds consistent. I mean, it sounds like you were leading the charge, and so I apologize you didn't get enough. It sounds like people are late to this and they don't realize it. But we do have a question from Radar, and then we can maybe get back to the social topic. He says, any experience using neurofeedback to help people with akathisia? And akathisia is where you have a lot of repetitive anxious movement, I believe. I know that, and Dr. Mari, I'll let you go. I know that for the listeners, I know that it's associated with benzo overuse and withdrawal. And I do know that benzos tend to cause something called the benzo bump in the EEG, which is like, I think it's like 18 to 22 hertz, something like that. I've heard a little disagreement. So maybe, Radar, I'll say maybe if they address that, but I'll let Dr. Mari come in here.
Yeah, it's one of those it depends questions. Surprise, surprise. Repetitive, it all depends on the source. I mean, a lot of these things are essentially motor symptoms or behavioral expressions of anxiety. Okay. So, this is where find the location in the EEG of the overarousal. Okay. The overarousal in the EEG with the behavioral component. Okay. And if you find that the individual has trouble with the behavioral component, then you go a little bit deeper. Theta SMR, by the way, tends to be highly implicated in this. So you look at theta SMR, you look at high beta beta. You look at theta beta ratios in the occipit. So these tend to be the real biggies. And most people know that I work with a clinical cue. So this is where I use 5 key locations where most symptoms tend to cluster around, and then compare to a clinical database. So it would be people with anxiety, with depression, with all of those. But then I would say if you don't resolve it, then you take it to the next level. But for a lot of this, I suggest, look at the simple solutions first. And if it's benzie withdrawal, well, that's another one. But be really, really careful. I mean, a tardive dyskinesia is another one. I'm going to really get up there. I have to qualify. I'm not an MD. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't prescribe. But the fact that when you get these movement disorders from a medication, I say be cautious about adding another medication. Essentially you're chasing the side effects. Now there are certain conditions where you have no choice and you must, but I'd be really, really careful about not discussing that it should be automatic that you accept these side effects and try and find another medication to counter the side effects. So please have those conversations with whomever is prescribing the meds. Like, is there something that won't give you those side effects before you start a counter one? But I'm out of scope talking about that. So check with your MD or psychiatrist.
All right. Speaking out of scope, we don't have another question. I mean, Pete gets to ask one.
Go for it.
And I'm not going to ask this tomorrow, or maybe I will. I'll see what kind of mood Jay's in. But
that means the big question.
The Tesla robots, because we were talking about AI and mental health. Now you have the actual physical presence out there. The faces are blanked out. You need to put a face on there and have eyeballs on there. But how do you think that's going to affect mental health in the future, Dr. Marie?
Well, again, I wrote about this in 2014. It's in my first book. Yeah. And some of the first models were coming out in healthcare.
What'd you say?
Typically senior care. So in the short term, everything is super, super positive. Okay. You don't have enough people to go around chatting with elders. So you have a cutesy little robot come in and go, hello, good morning, bring them their medication. And it's really, really positive because of a novelty effect. Okay. And then after that, what tends to happen is the depression or people feeling lonely comes back, or they get oddly attached to the robots. Okay. And what you want to look at is essentially age appropriateness and situation appropriateness. So little children getting attached to teddy bears or dolls or things, essentially there's a personification. It's part of development and we all grow out of it. So I really question why we are propagating these alignments with constructed facsimiles, essentially, of ourselves. Okay, what's the purpose of this? And Pete, if you want to get really spicy, I mean, I talk about the sex dolls as well. I mean, oh my God, they've been out in Japan for eons. Okay, and if you go online, it's pretty creepy. There are actually chat rooms of men who are in love and marry these dolls. There are vacation spots where essentially because they're being ostracized if they take their doll wife on vacation.
Like Legoland?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, you're creating a mental illness. Okay. And of course, they're much easier to get along with than regular women. They don't talk back. Yeah. Okay. Talk to a rock. They don't talk back either. So, do you want a real relationship with another real individual?
But
where
Dr. Marie, what if I'm just saying, what if the caregiver, the robot has my face on it? Maybe I get a better looking face or whatever, but you have, hey mom, let me help you out here because you have elder care.
Yeah.
You have nanny care. I don't want to get into the connection thing and all that. I know you have to connect and you have to see, but for $30,000 to have this thing help you out, I think it's going to make an impact quicker than we think. And I'm just, if we could speculate what we think what the impact, could be. Will it help loneliness? Will it make it worse?
I think
Like
it's
you
going
said,
to make it. I think it's going to make it worse for the in the bigger picture. I mean, it's one of these things. You're going to solve something and then create a new problem. Okay, and I think we really need to fundamentally talk about what is our purpose here. I don't want to get too religious on people, but essentially, like, why are we here? Right. And one of the things that we've kind of noted, well, that the huge trend of people living alone, right? A lot of people are choosing to live alone now because they don't want the burden of taking care of other people. Okay. Well, surprise, surprise, when something goes off with you, then there's nobody to take care of you. Right. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we're seeing in terms of the whole epidemic of loneliness and reaching out via computers, et cetera. So I think we really, really need to have these dialogues very, very regularly. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, extrovert, introvert, there's this mid one now. I'm a regular hibernator. My friends and family know this. I disappear for weeks on end, and they're like, okay, Mari's gone down her rabbit hole. She'll be back in a few weeks, right? So it's okay to choose to not be incredibly interactive all the time, but not a withdrawal. And I think the key thing is not withdrawing into a created world, or a world that replaces other connections.
Yeah. So Dr. Mari, and I actually work in the senior care industry. So I do think, like, we actually give the clients right now, we give them a robot dog, because there's a study that shows that they can get some well-being from it. I mean, some warmth, affection, happiness. But I'm going to
follow through. I'm going to interrupt you, and then please come back. But that's exactly my point. Short term, it's fantastic. It's kind of like if you give a child a robot dog. It's a toy. It's fun. It's entertaining. Okay.
I like it.
But entertainment, that's great. That's novel. But when you start to get an emotional attachment to an inanimate object, that's the definition of pathology. So entertaining, yes, but emotional, be careful. That's where I really say bring the hospital visits where people bring in puppies and they have puppy day or adult dog day, and have the kids come in.
Obviously the ideal situation is a human in the home taking care of somebody, and that's kind of why we're in business, and that's what we do. But as a stopgap, and I know Japan is very interested in robotics because they have, I think I read that literally majority of Japan is over the age of 50. Like, it's getting they're not having children. And, bringing up, this is going to go into radar.
You want to know why?
Well, so I do think so you mentioned men, Dr. Mari, a lot of research has come out that women's mate drive is much more selective than men's, and that dating apps, Jonathan Haidt has talked about this, dating apps have now allowed women to prioritize the tallest, highest earning men. Your profile literally says how much you earn. And I've had friends that say, sorry, you're not 6'1", I can't talk to you, and vice versa,
I'm going to call you on that. I'm going to call you on that. It's put it equal.
I have data. I mean,
no. I'm going to
I can back it up.
No, let's chat this out for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks.
Females is finally on the table. Okay, men's has always been there. Okay.
Oh, sure. There was injustice before.
Beauty and weight. Okay, and it was the criteria. It was always there.
Yeah.
Youth, beauty, weight.
And it's still there to some degree.
Exactly. Yeah. And the only difference, I think, is now the females is equal, and it's on the plate next to the males. Period. It's I don't want to say equalized it. It's just out there.
Well, I think the data would say that the power may. I wonder if it's shifted. So Dr. Mari, I think it's like Twitter. Tinder. One of the major networks put out that men have to send 30 messages to get a response to every woman's one.
Yeah.
And there's data out there that says the top 10% of men. This is the longest running study of American sexual behavior. It says the top 10% of men are having 50% of all heterosexual activity in the country.
Yeah.
And this is definitive that women have much more criteria than men. And there's things women can do about their beauty. There's things women can do about their weight. Doing something about your height and your income, which are women's main two criteria, anytime
Okay,
it's
Josh, you just
is
pushed
a little
button.
harder. It's a little harder to be honest.
Debate that because a lot of stuff that the women are doing, the duck lips and all of this, like we got to be really careful.
Oh, and men have unhealthy standards too.
Starving
They're not
themselves to
innocent.
death. So let's just slash that comment, okay? But I think what's happening is we're coming full circle. Okay, that in the quote unquote animal kingdom, it depends on the species, but this goes back and forth. But
Yeah.
I would say, we talk about surface observation and then deeper. So I would say I am the last generation on this planet that really, really knew what the true male pursuit was. Okay, in terms of not in the toxic type of male way, but the way males would actively pursue
courtship or something.
And females were, I wouldn't say necessarily passive, but weren't as responsive in the mating or the dating game. Okay, and then in 2008, 2009. There was a major shift, okay? And we blamed, I don't know whether you recall the women's jeans just dropped low, like right over the pubic ridge. You had the thongs coming out of the back of the jeans. The décolleté dropped like crazy, okay? And all of a sudden, the women were pursuing men. Okay, and we blamed this on the music industry, hip hop. Does anybody know what happened in 2008, 2009?
Mom jeans. What?
No.
What are you getting at?
Porn became free on the internet. The males stopped.
Well, the housing crisis too, but yeah, go on.
But that's essentially what happened. Females started pursuing males because the males weren't pursuing females anymore. So there are all kinds of things that are causing this back and forth. So
on the porn issue, so something I've read is that, and we need to get to something I've read is that basically avoidant men with avoidant attachments are the more susceptible to porn. In other words, people who were not really demanding emotional intimacy to begin with are more interested in porn. So let me get to Radar's question because maybe it'll dovetail and then we can come back to this. Yeah. He asked about protocols for social anxiety. Radar, I was going to mention, just since Jay's not here and then Dr. Mari can do more in depth. With social anxiety, Jay always mentions T6 alpha, and that is also associated, by the way, you can Google that. There's data that shows that that's the most definitive point for body dysmorphia. And so T6 is also one of his autism phenotypes. He says it's specific to the Asperger's, or now it's called high functioning autism, which originally Asperger's was defined as people with social difficulties and massive special interest in a single topic. So I'll let Dr. Mari go now and address.
Yeah. Watch when you let me loose. It's hard to get the floor back.
But there's others.
There you go. It depends. Okay. So social anxiety is a very, very popular term now. Okay. You want to make, I think that social anxiety is just a component within anxiety. So again, what you want to do is look at the EEG, see where the hyper arousal sits, take it down, okay, and see if the socialization starts to improve. The other is sometimes you find when individuals are going through cognitive blips, okay, that they don't feel as comfortable in social situations because, so for example, people in their 50s, as they start to get a little bit older, the tip of tongue issues come in, they slow down, and then social anxiety comes in because they're a bit concerned about how they present themselves. So really look at the underbelly of social anxiety. So if it really is social anxiety and only social anxiety, then the protocols that Joshua and Jay are suggesting are very appropriate. But sometimes social is just a component of something. The other, in terms of teenagers, I'm sorry, they've just learned to interact on these things. They've never learned how to communicate face to face. And if you go back to my generation and Pete's generation, I think Pete and I are probably pretty close in age.
I'm much younger. Continue.
Yeah. Adolescence was extremely awkward. We all had social anxiety. Some of us were better at faking that we weren't nervous about things. That was it. We were posing, we were posturing. You had to learn how to communicate. So if you have never learned how to really efficiently communicate and you haven't gone through those awkward phases, you are going to have social anxiety.
So it's multivariate. Yeah. And I guess somebody like Jay might say, like, look at what you like, kind of like what Mari said, or Dr. Mari said earlier about akathisias. Look at in the EEG for maybe not over arousal in this case, but you're looking for areas that seem out of the norm, I guess.
And anybody on the spectrum, or there are some pretty if you're not looking at the quote unquote usual stuff, you'll get it at the next level. But I mean, ADHD and social anxiety, generalized anxiety, these, like, everybody has it now.
It's true. I know that I think lots of people mentioned, but Dr. Hill has mentioned right frontal beta, I think, for anxiety. So maybe that's a potential target. But I said I was going to link Radar's question to our overall topic about people isolating themselves. I looked up. So I mentioned that Jay says that this high alpha at T6 is one of his autism phenotypes. And I looked up one time, and to my recollection, Japan has much higher levels of autism in the population. And so it almost makes sense to me, autistic people, unfortunately, they're less successful at dating and marriage. And so on some level, and I think this is a little bit where I was going to, come back at Dr. Mari just a little bit to say, Japanese men may be facing special difficulties that maybe somebody that doesn't have the same EEG patterns, let's say, may face. Or even the same culture. I know that it's a very, like, for one, a big Japanese culture observer told me that its career is even more important there than it is here, to the point where if you are going to be a hairdresser, you have to be the best hairdresser you can be. You're not an amateur. Or if you're going to be a ramen cook, I mean, I've watched a lot of Japanese documentaries and YouTube content, and that is a vibe I get. And the second thing I'll say is they're known there for taking care of their parents. And so what I've seen interviews now, young people say, well, I'm prioritizing my career and taking care of my elderly parents. And so I don't think that's the only reason they're single, but they are more single and less kids.
There are so many things. I mean, this is the perfect storm of all kinds of things that are coming down. So you mentioned in terms of how the status of males is changing in terms of, what females want. That's a big one in terms of females in Japan not wanting the traditional subservient role. Okay.
Yes.
And one of the things, Japan was one of the first locations where the pornography and prostitution, the quote unquote massage parlors, just went boom. Okay. Because essentially females were starting to have, I wouldn't say demands, but they just wanted a higher expectations, I guess. Okay. And so you had the traditional with the modern overlapping with the proliferation of technologies. So, I mean, all of it it's, as I said, it's the absolute perfect storm. Have you heard of the herbivore male?
No.
That's a Chinese concept, right? Yeah.
It actually came out of Japan, right?
Oh, okay.
A lot of females were essentially complaining about what they were calling the herbivore male. And I mean, there's a lot of, underlying humor in there in terms of a male that isn't interested in meat. But essentially what it is are males that just weren't willing to put in the extra mile to actually pursue females, etc., but not just pursue them in a sexual manner, but actually to be interesting, to want to engage past the traditional expectations. Yeah, I mean, we're in a major cultural shift in many locations.
And I think so. Anytime I say something in defense of males or positive male, it does not mean that women have not been discriminated against, I want to say. I think something I tell friends is, because I have female friends who are single at advancing age and they're very upset. Why can't I find a guy that is, you know, in our town, to be honest, they're very socially awkward. And I think it's because we're in a university town, higher IQ. High IQ is associated with autism, by the way. There's an increased correlation there. And I think if I had to boil it down,
right now?
well, I was just going to say, when men have been selected for their earning potential, ultimately for thousands of years. And so we're not conditioned to have a lot more to offer. We're not conditioned to know how to talk about our emotions or your conflict resolution, you know, or wooing, you know. Men today are conditioned. I mean, like I said earlier, the criteria is often income. That is one of women's number 1 or 2 criteria. And you know, workaholics aren't known for their warm and fuzziness. So anyway, that was a little bit of a defense.
The issue is we're throwing black and white, and there's so much gray in there. So I'll give you an example. Yeah. There are a lot of you know, professional, high-earning women who actually would be perfectly fine with a male that makes less money than them. It's actually the male that rejects that female because you know, culturally his ego isn't as good. There are also women who would be fine with you know, house daddies, you know, things like that. So we have this, you know, kind of a bit of a gap that has to be figured out, and we haven't quite figured that out yet. In the meantime, I mean, there's a cute little song about it. We have the emergence of the quote unquote man child. Okay. So the male, wherein if he can't be on top, he stops playing the game. Oh. And I wish I remember this man's name. Oh gosh. But it's a book that just came out, and I've just browsed through it, and he's right on. And he was talking essentially about how males of 60 and above essentially owe a debt to the younger male, in that they just swooped it all up. And now that the world is changing in terms of gender parity, ethnicity parity, all of this, the younger male all of a sudden isn't the high, doesn't have the high position in the hierarchy or the high end of the totem pole. That's probably not PC anymore. So the young male is now equal. Okay, but has not been socialized to be equal. And I think that's my pushback with you, Anthony. It's that the young male is now.
I don't want to steer this into politics, but I think politics and upbringing has come into a play on that.
You bet. Yeah. No, you're right.
Because you know, women tend to, especially white women, older, are liberal, and the kids are liberal as well, and the guys are tuning. The guys are conservative, right? Yeah. I mean, if I'm just saying the United States, that's what's going on, and that is further putting the divide in there. In fact, so much, I think. Did you hear about this tax? They want to tax mid-20-year-olds that aren't married, males.
Oh my God! Okay, that's kooky. I do want to, before we go into that, Pete, because I think it would be fun.
Well, I'm trying to get the radar here, because now we got some questions. See?
Well, he's got a question about. Sorry, yeah. He wanted to know, Dr. Mari, why don't you?
He was right. I was going to tell Pete he was right. Females.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yes. Females have been indoctrinated into having a lot more compassion with males, but I wouldn't confound that with liberalism. That's my.
Yeah, and to Pete's point, before I read Radar's question, to Pete's point, I mean, Financial Times, other major publications have written about, in America, women are becoming much more liberal, whereas men have stayed the same, and it tends to be conservative. So there is an increasing divergence. I mean, I've literally seen articles about, well, I would not date a conservative. So anyway, this is something that's being studied. Okay, yeah. Radar says, Dr. Mari, you can go for this. Are there any examples of neurofeedback protocols that are passed down as lore and work for certain issues, but we really don't understand why they work?
Oh, I wouldn't say so, because if you ask the right people, it's not lore. But I would say there are certain steadfast ones, but we know why they work. Radar, do you have one protocol in mind that you're curious about, or?
I think Radar got on the politics side of things now.
I'll think Radar. Here's one I've been thinking about. Jay actually told me so alpha down at PZ is used for PTSD a lot. Dr. Ruth Lanius has done studies on it. When I asked Jay about it, he told me in writing, he says that's a treatment effect, meaning it's a short-term effect. And he says they're reducing the alpha, but if you look at the alpha shortly after, it normalizes, because that's a behavior that alpha has. Dr. Hill has said this as well, that alpha tends to bounce back to norm, particularly I think at PZ, whichever direction you train it. But I even have a little bit of trouble with that one, Radar. I don't know that we actually understand it, because
I don't train alpha down at PZ. I mean, to me, that just isn't a protocol that makes sense. But I mean,
Lanius does. But go on,
yeah. I consider, I did a couple of presentations on this. Alpha is the brain barometer. Okay, it tells you about health. And I can see that there might be, Radar, I think we're on to the topic you want now, kind of the unknown. So if you wiggle and jiggle alpha, Jay might call it this treatment effect, but you might actually be doing something by kind of shaking it around a little bit. But I don't know. But it doesn't seem like an odd idea.
I think the lore, it's like it does deserve challenging occasionally. So for instance, the first two people that I've ever seen do alpha down at PZ, their sleep was harmed for a couple weeks, and they were tracking it, so it was somewhat objective data. So then I don't know.
What bands are we talking about, by the way?
What's that? Sorry.
What's the band of alpha? Is the full 8 to 12, or is 8 to 9, or is it?
Yeah, it was 9 to 11, let's say. Yeah, something like that. So, so I can't see.
I would never do that. So go figure.
Hey, and you don't need, if you're, sounds like you don't need to if you're working already. I think how content is. They're only on one of my screens to say, what if they're an only child? I don't.
Context.
Yeah, that must be from earlier. So, I've lost the context. Dr. Mari, something you said on the men are becoming man-child. So I'll just tell you guys, if you guys are interested in this, the people that I like are Richard Reeves has written a book on men recently on the Brookings Institute. And he points out that things like male drug abuse and male suicide rate have been skyrocketing. Yeah. Male friendships are lower than they've ever been. So men are much less likely to have friends. Yeah. And then he points out that there's data out there that suggests that I've heard this anecdotally too. Male children or young children, they may actually be more emotionally sensitive than female children. I've heard this from a couple moms now. And but two, they may be more affected by things like, so the example, Scott Galloway, who's another guy I read, he says, if a father leaves the home, female child outcomes tend to remain the same. It's the male children's outcomes that die. So I think men, Dr. Mari, yes, they are complicit. We are all, to some degree, responsible for actions. But I do think there may be unique things about modern life that are affecting the male children more.
And Anthony, I might be giving the wrong impression. I'm going to ask you to tune in a little bit more, because I'm actually really agreeing with you a lot.
Awesome.
Females really needed a lot of help and a lot of attention in the educational system. We do know, for example, we have always paid more attention to males in the system than the females. Okay. So that could be a good example in terms of why males are more sensitive, because the females are starting to get half the attention. Okay. If we go a little bit bigger, or what I was starting to say before, in that we put a lot of focus on helping females, their self-esteem in math, in terms of helping females get into higher education, et cetera. The acceptance rate for males was always double, triple that of females, the application rate, et cetera. So we put a lot into the females. Okay.
And now it's flipped. Women are getting into college much more.
But again, this is what I'm talking about. The playing field has leveled. But I would say to many, that a lot of people don't realize that. So they think the world is still the way it was. And right now, the girls are doing great. Okay, we need to pay more attention to the boys. Okay, but not in the way that we used to. So we have to change the way we pay attention. No, young men are in trouble. I'm really, really with you. One small thing though, females do very, very well in everything once the father leaves the home, except selection of a stable mate thereafter.
Wow.
So please do not undermine the roles of fathers. Fathers are so, so, so important.
We got swell content here. What if they're an only child?
Yeah, could that be referring to social anxiety, perhaps? Oh, here's another question. What controls their drive? What dictates their mental purpose for success? Since we're talking about men, maybe that question was about men. You can take that whatever direction you want, Dr. Maury.
Well, birth order comes into play, right? Firstborn, lastborn, you have different experiences.
Studies on that are very disputed, Pete. They kind of don't think it matters that much, your birth order.
It used to matter. It used to matter. It's kind of like if you go back to 1940, the first male child was always bow-legged. Do you want to know why?
No, why?
Because parents were so eager to have the child walk that they would support the child so they never developed strong muscles. Okay. So there are a lot of little cute, not so cute things in there. Yeah, the focus on the firstborn, the idealization of the firstborn male over the female. There were all kinds of things, but they don't hold true in many aspects of culture now, and they hold very true still in others in terms of abortion rates or on females versus male fetuses in certain cultures. I mean, it's still very, very ugly, right? So it depends on culture, situation.
They haven't found a strong effect of birth order on personality specifically.
Not anymore.
Why am I? Yeah, and I believe you, it could have been different. How could I forget, though? I forgot to say this about social anxiety and Japan, etc. So I think it's like literally 85% of diagnosed autistic people are men. And yes, they think that women are underdiagnosed. That is true. However, autism itself has been described as a form of hypermaleness because it involves one of the key traits is a lesser ability to put one's emotions in verbalizing one's emotions. And by the way, autism sufferers of both male and female autism sufferers have significantly elevated testosterone levels. And there is a study out there. There's all kinds of data that could support this, but basically transgender people that are taking hormones to become men or to, present as men, they lose the ability or they lose, their ability to recognize emotions from faces are significantly dampened. And I was just talking to Radar in the chat. Yes, women are running out of the socially intelligent men, but there's a smaller pool of those socially intelligent men to begin with because women are known, and part of it's socialization, but I think also there's biological reasons why one sex has the greater social intelligence. So now men are not outstripping women dramatically on income as dramatically, and now they need to rely on some other traits.
I'm gonna poke back a little bit with a little fun. So I agree with a lot of what you say, but I also
that's fine.
We have to put this in sociological context. Okay, so women needed these skills because they could not rely on brawn. Okay, first of all, if you take a male child and a female child within the same family, the male is always bigger. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not being sexist or genderist. It's just a fact. Okay, so in terms of size and stature, okay, a female needs to read cues. Okay, much more subtly. She cannot rely on her physicality as much. She has to rely on her brain, and what we used to call in terms of intuition. Now, there's no freaking intuition. You're using these subtle systems of recognition and knowing when you're potentially in danger or not. So these are acquired skill sets. Now, as males, we're all of these physical, things are coming into play. Males are needing more of this. If you look at relational aggression used to be only female. You would see it in cloisters of educated males. No irony here. You would see it in monasteries, and you would see it in academic communities.
Passive aggression.
Could not use brawn. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's when they went to the female. There's nothing female about it. It's what you do when you're not using physical aggression. It's as simple as that. So yeah, we can talk about hormones and things. I'm not negating that. Okay. But
I think they have an impact, but I agree this is socialized too. Go on.
Yeah. So I mean, this is where all of these things start to come together. My other point here is, and I'm going to get into trouble for this, and that's okay. Okay.
No
when
worry,
I started working with autism, and this is 30 years ago, autism would be the child that would come in and would be rocking and screaming. Okay. Or, like just very, very, there's no way you could ever confound. You did not need an assessment for autism. Okay. And now what, certain hard to spot autism, it's so subtle now. Okay. And I think we're confounding a lot of things. And I wonder in terms of certain what we're looking at in terms of how autism expresses itself differently in females. I think, again, part of this is the expectations on females. So if a female isn't as socially apt as opposed to inept, then you kind of accuse them of autism. Versus a male with the exact same characteristics, you wouldn't, but they would have to be more exaggerated. So, but I mean, it's a really, really tough one. And again, I really think we should be talking about this more, not arguing about it more, but talking more.
On the bright side, I will say, because I've been racking my head what we could even do about things like dating and the loneliness crisis and lack of friends. That same
get out.
Yeah. But how do you make masses of people do something but I will say, so I think I've been reading articles saying that Gen Z is liking in-person contact more now. They're doing things like creating clubs, I don't know, on Meetup, and book reading clubs and stuff are much more popular, gardening clubs than they used to be. I even saw something, Wall Street Journal, I think the other day said, getting off of social media is the new status symbol. So having your away or not being on there, or having a few followers is something they said. Interesting. So there's a little pushback, which is probably good.
Yeah, I wrote on this years ago. You cannot have more than 50 friends and be friends. You just can't. And it comes again from early animal behavior, grooming. In order to have a friend, you have to, I'm not talking about pedophilia grooming, by the way, for anybody who's gonna but no, you have to literally, whether you were a monkey or a horse, okay, you had to be there grooming, cultivating. So anybody who has more than 50 friends, those are just not friends, right?
Fake friends are what they call it.
Well, no, I agree. Friends. They're acquaintances. They're people you know.
Yeah, right? There you go. Something to support you, Dr. Mari, is there was research I saw a couple times. It said if you have fewer than 5 close friends, you start to suffer decline in your well-being. So you want to have 5, but 5 is not 50 like you're saying, and and honestly, having 5 close friends makes me feel a little tired. But I think they're saying Americans these days are starting to say they have 1.5, and so there seems to be a gap here. We need to do a little better.
And again, that depends on the person. The only problem is in communities before people moved around a lot, you essentially could have less of the really, really tight ones. But now many of us are at risk of friends moving away, right? And then, of course, as we get older, friends pass. But but people need people. Isn't there a song like that? Yeah.
30 grand.
What's that about?
The robots can be 30 grand.
Oh, yeah. We'll see when that comes out. The Chinese showed one this past week that could do your dishes for you, and it was pretty alarming.
Put the sensors on your head is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm very happy to have a dishwasher, you know, that little box you put dishes in, you know, a robotic to do those type of things. But I think I draw the line at friendship and socializing. If entertainment, okay, but entertainment should not replace true socialization. As simple as that for me.
So everybody that showed up, if we miss something like swell content, and you're new to the channel here, thanks for showing up. Pete at neuronoodle.com. If we miss something, email me. We do a Thursday show. We talk about what went on in here, and we get more into depth. So that's what we do on a Thursday show. Dr. Marie's kind enough to show up again, double duty. Thank you, Dr. Marie. And for that kind of
the EEG tomorrow, maybe.
Oh, funny. Yeah. No, I enjoyed it, Dr. Mari, and thanks for sort of back and forth thing with me, but also, you know, thanks for acknowledging that just like women have needed help, men need help too.
Because it's here, like this is how long ago I've been writing about this, you know, and that's the latest one. That's the skinny one. So I mean, I've been on this for 20 years. So
what about the app? The app, Dr. Marie.
Yes, of course. Okay. So our app, we combine heart rate variability with harmonics. Extremely powerful. I've mentioned before, everything we do is data-driven research. Actually, Anthony, I threw a bit your way, so you know what I'm talking about. Heavily researched and documented.
That. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have one for generalized brain calm. So the social anxiety, any of the anxieties help to quiet. We have one for insomnia, different forms of insomnia. That one's called sleep. And we have another one for focus. And that captures many different reasons or causes for focus. If it is hyper versus hypoarousal, focus needed for creative process versus straightforward memory. All of those are covered in the 3 apps available at swinglesonic.com.
Swingle, SWINGLESONIC.com.
You bet.
Put it in there. Anthony, I want to get my nerd on in the technology group. You got anything for me?
Yeah, thank you, Pete. That's always nice that you try to rep for people or help them to. And just, reach us out on Facebook. A lot of us are on there. You know, Jay's on there, Pete's on there, and you can see us in Brainmaster and Neurofeedback Exchange and Science and Technology Discovery. So thank you, guys. We really appreciate it for you attending.
And then Radar, all the usual suspects. Thanks for hanging with us. And I'll put my notes here together, and we'll get more in depth on some of these topics on the Thursday show, Dr. Marie.
Okay, sounds good.
You always count on Radar. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, have a great night.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay.
Watch out.